Let's Get Down to Business is presented by Bravo, the marketing arm of Ash Brokerage Corporation, the practice enhancement company. All this week, we're addressing the Social Security system, and on today's show, Medicare and Obamacare impact. And with me today is Ken Davis, CLU, CHFC, CFP, and CPA. Hi everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and contributing author to Backroom Technician. Let's get down to business. Well, welcome day 4, Ken.
Hey, Steve.
I have to say, CLU, CHFC, CFP, and CPA, I just want to do a cheer. CLU, CHFC. All right, I'll try to restrain myself. I'm cheering because you're walking us through things that I think are going to help consumers, but our advisors, many of our advisors want to be in the senior market. And these are huge issues for seniors. We talked at the beginning of the week, putting the last one I looked at put 60 grand on the table in a period of 4 years. My client was completely flabbergasted, could not believe that was money that didn't injure their age 70. Today, I'm talking about people who do have money. We're kind of getting away from middle America today. We're going to talk a little bit about the people who really took the hit on the last election, on the last legislation, on the last taxes. I mean, everybody that's in a higher bracket. And by the way, Ken and I have written a couple articles together as on effective tax brackets and marginal brackets and what the difference is, and that's a whole show in itself, honestly, how to play in the brackets. But it really matters. Medicare and Obamacare have impacted some of the more wealthy Americans, and now there's additional taxation issues on this. And is this going to impact what we've been talking about all week in Social Security?
Yeah, what's interesting is I've been a student of the taxation of Social Security, and I've worked with strategies to reduce adjusted gross income and thereby modified adjusted gross income. What was interesting is the government has sunk to new lows as far as I'm concerned. They've been, as I've explained in the prior show, there's direct tax, here's your tax rate. Then there's all these other ancillary calculations and alternative tax rates, which makes it even harder to talk about and for the American public to really know how they're taxed. They've sunk to new lows. Now, they're not even being called taxes. Let's talk about Medicare. Medicare premiums, they're calling them premiums, increase if your modified adjusted gross income increases past a certain level. Now granted, you have to be fairly wealthy before this kicks in. Not hugely, but it impacts you. And so this is a new way of actually assessing a new tax that isn't called a tax. And furthermore, it's actually being assessed by another branch of government. And what's another insidious aspect of this is it's not going to show up in the total amounts of taxes being paid because it is not considered a tax. So when they gather their misinformation of telling the public of how much people are being taxed, those numbers won't be included in the income tax because they're not considered an income tax. But when you take modified adjusted gross income to determine how much Medicare premium somebody's going to pay, that's a tax. I don't care what you call it. In my brain, in my mind, that's a tax. And this is another way that they're getting around facing the American public and saying, we're increasing your taxes.
Okay, now, how does this, if I'm just a retiree and I'm not that far out, okay, and I'm thinking about Medicare, and I know you're saying adjusted gross income counts.
Yep.
Modified adjusted gross income, all this matters.
Right.
And I'm trying to keep my number, my adjusted gross and my modified adjusted gross down as low as I can. And I don't want my Social Security benefits to be taxed. I'm trying to modify this. How do I do this when they can't even call it a straight out tax? Where actually, if it's out of my pocket, what does it matter if it's a tax or premium? It's the same thing.
Well, what we do is we manage adjusted gross income. And how we do that, like we said in the prior shows, is where's the income coming from? Is there some way that I can reallocate assets on my balance sheet from one that produces income that's included in gross income or through some process on the upper part of page 1, can I switch to something else that still provides an income flow that's taxed or included at a much lower rate? And the answer is yes, we can get there. We're going to eventually get there in our show. But that's what we're trying to do is manage AGI. First for Social Security. If they make so much money that even our management doesn't affect Social Security, it might affect Medicare premiums. If they make so much that we can even get it low enough to affect Medicare premiums and Social Security, we may be able to affect it for Obamacare tax, that 2.5% for the really wealthy incomes. So there's different stages and different people are affected differently. And you can either use one or another or both. For instance, doing a Roth conversion from an IRA to a Roth, yes, you get hit that first year. But after the conversion's done, your AGI is permanently reduced because that income coming out is not taxable.
Well, we get in the second segment. I want to talk about that because that could be a strategy for people who aren't quite retired, our baby boomer brethren.
Right.
We're out right on the precipice here. Maybe we need to start thinking, I hate paying that ordinary income tax on the conversion, but it may really affect, you just named three. And by the way, I don't know if you meant to do this in order, but it sounded like you did. We're trying to defeat taxation first at Social Security. Well, we may not be able to do it at that level for higher end.
That's your middle income folks.
Right. Now I'm moving up the food chain to Medicare and the surtax. That's, I don't know if it's a surtax or a premium, but whatever you're trying to call it, Ken. And then the third one is Obamacare itself. So these three areas, we're trying to modify those three things as best we can. And one of those things we may ultimately look at is saying, hey, baby boomers, you may want to make those conversions of your traditional IRAs to Roth just because it will make a difference in the end game with Social Security, Medicare, and Obamacare. I didn't even think about that. Honestly, Ken, to be honest with you, I didn't even think about Obamacare being part of the mix here.
And it is, and I just had a thought, and I haven't researched this, but I'm wondering, the tax credits people get on the Obamacare premiums, I can't tell you what the answer is, but I wonder if this is going to impact whether or not they get a credit or not.
Oh my gosh, I never thought about the income.
I hadn't either, it just hit me.
Unreal, we'll have to look at that. We come back from the break after I don't have a heart attack. We'll talk about Roth conversions, life insurance alternatives, and other popular tax advantage strategies and tactics to keep more of your money. That's the end game here. And don't forget, you can request any of our show's documents as sample examples from Backroom Technician at ashbrokerage.com. And you can also sign up for your own 30-day free trial at Backroom Technician. Just go out to their website, www.brtnow.com/trialsignup.aspx. We'll be right back after the break.
Take a close look at your hard-earned dollar. How do you think your money's doing? Are you keeping an eye on it? Is it protected from taxes, inflation, and market risk? Over time, those Washingtons could become Franklins. With tax-advantaged indexed universal life, from one of the largest distributors of indexed universal life, Ash Brokerage.
Well, welcome back. I'm Steve Savant with Ken Davis. And remember, you can watch all our episodes of Let's Get Down to Business, including my weekly consumer show, Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game, right at ashbrokerage.com. When you go out to our site, just click on the show logo. It'll take you right out to the show. And just remember, heads up, before moving forward with any of the ideas you hear on our show, always consult your tax advisor, your legal counsel, as well as your broker-dealer compliance officer. Well, let's get down to business. Ken, I loved the way you staged that. We're trying to defeat, the middle class is going to be caught in the Social Security issue. A little higher affluent Americans are going to be caught maybe in the Medicare issue. Then Obamacare tax. All these things matter, and we're trying to dicker with our adjusted gross income and our modified adjusted gross income to reduce this. But now we're shifting gears a little bit because I remember when the Roth IRA came out and they said you could convert if you're willing to pay the ordinary income tax at that time, and that was kind of a revolution, and that happened. I thought those days were done. But now you're talking about baby boomers re-looking at Roth conversions right up front, or whatever they're going to fund from now on going forward, maybe going Roth, because it could impact Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, Obamacare. I mean, there's too many things out there now. Our name of the game, is it worth making that number? I mean, if you're earning money and you're converting it, sounds like I'm throwing big money away at the tax bracket.
Well, what's interesting about that is I remember the big hullabaloo about Roth conversion. I'm sure you remember as well. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is it's hard to tell. It becomes kind of a gray area. But the assumption is, choosing a Roth over a regular IRA comes down to what are your tax brackets going to be. In an increasing tax bracket environment, which a lot of people thought is or was going to happen and did, then Roth becomes more attractive. Mm-hmm. But never did I see any discussion in all the articles, in journals and professional journals, et cetera, of talking about these other ancillary aspects, the taxation of Social Security, Actually, Medicare premiums kind of came out, I think, after that, the increases. The Obamacare is obviously new. Alternative minimum tax was around then. The fact is your effective rates are really much higher in retirement than was anticipated. We always assumed they were going to go down. Well, they're actually going up. So it makes sense to go back and revisit the Roth conversion in conjunction with other strategies to try and control AGI and modified adjusted gross income, because all these other tax impacts that are based on AGI.
I'm thinking some people in the middle America may have tax headroom to actually do this and not feel it. So this could really benefit middle America, because then they'll be able to move everything into Roth if they can again, you have to do the math.
Right.
And then it won't impact these areas that we're discussing.
Well, and the other thing that can be done is some pre-planning. Once we get past the 59.5%, 10% penalty, maybe we start advising clients when we run our projections and stuff to start taking money out before they even hit 66 for full retirement age, or 65 or whatever it is, so that they can get the money out a little bit at a time, maybe a fifth each year over 5 years, keep the tax brackets low. By that point in time, you've converted it either into a Roth or maybe a life insurance contract or something else. And then once they get into retirement, and maybe before retirement, we start working with our other strategies we're going to talk about, where we're combining deferred annuities, income annuities, and life insurance to provide an income flow at retirement that keeps them out of being taxed on Social Security or Medicare or Obamacare.
And I think it's really important now. We're talking about not only tax strategies, we're not only exclusively looking at retirement income. It's so much broader than this now. It impacts. When we were talking about yesterday's show, and you were saying, well, or the show before, we have to do 3 passes at the AGI and then finally to come to a number. I'm thinking, like, who's going to do that? I mean,
well, that's why we have computers, and it's interesting. We can, with computers, made taxes easier to do, and then the government says, oh, they can handle all this crazy detail stuff. Let's just throw more at them, and so the programs got more and more complicated. It's gotten to the point where you feed the money into the black box, it does its number crunching, and out comes an answer. So it's really a before and after picture. Take all this craziness away and just run it through a software and say, if I do no planning, this is how I get hit. If I do the planning, this is the effect. This subtracted from that is my what I did to improve my situation. And you can look at effective tax rates before and after, what the CPAs like to call within and without. It's basically a before and after picture. That's how you get this done. And then you can kind of toss out all these details. You don't have to know it. You just have to know that there are issues, there is planning opportunities, and by trying different strategies, take a look at your particular circumstances, see if it works for you or not.
Well, I heard you just mention a little side note, and remember that Ken is a CPA, which this makes my statement even more, I think, valuable. You're looking at the difference of if I do decide to go Roth, let's say, but you also mentioned life insurance in the same breath. So there's maybe a choice here, a yin and a yang. What scenario would I choose one over the other? Because I always thought, hey, Roth is the way to go.
Well, at some point in the show, we're going to get into what we used to call a combination annuity or a split annuity. And back then the strategy was, when interest rates are so high, we would allocate a portion to an immediate annuity for, say, 5 years, gives us or maybe even 10, gives you a nice income. Most of it's considered return of principal, so it doesn't get included in AGI, and that has that impact. The remainder isn't just a simple deferred annuity on a guaranteed interest rate that would grow back to the original total of the 2 investments and would start all over again. Well, now our interest rates are so low, that's not there. So we have to get into different kinds of strategies, but it's an effective tool with modern techniques.
Well, I think when we talk about this tomorrow, we got to touch on it, because I think for most of our listeners, for most of our advisors, say, Steve, I just really think it's Roth and not life. But sometimes a life insurance contract could be the way to go, depending upon the client. Well, that's our show for today. I want to remind you that you can read all my online insurance commentary, advisor blogs, and articles on producersweb.com, and all my answers to consumer questions on Insurance Library. And remember, you can always view all our shows on our on-demand video section located at ashbrokerage.com. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or just email me, steve.savant@ashbrokerage.com. And remember, you could be wiser as an Ash Brokerage advisor. I'm Steve Savant. See you tomorrow.